Richard Pitino, son of Rick, former coach of New Mexico, just took his team to the round of 32 in the NCAA tournament, is heading to Xavier after Sean Miller snaked them. First off, let's have this conversation about Sean Miller. Would you say that he snaked Xavier a little bit?
I mean, I feel like his foot was out the door after they beat Texas because I feel like winning that game got him the job.
Yeah.
I don't know. There were always so many questions about the team after this year just because of the way it was assembled. Like they had, now that I think about it, they had McKnight, Fremantle, Hunter. Those guys all graduated. I'm missing some too. It felt like Swain was either one more year or NBA.
Yeah.
And then Conwell had one more year. But the point being is they had no youth or future.
Right.
So I don't know. It definitely feels like out of the 3 years to leave, like this was the worst one, especially after this past year in 23 and 24. It was really bad. So I don't know. It definitely felt like the worst time for him to go. And then, I've seen stuff come out on Twitter about like him putting together his roster already with people like not even being in the portal yet. And I don't know. It's a mess. I'm just glad that they're moving forward. Fresh face, got more Italian in the Big East. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. It seemed like Sean Miller was out the door. There were rumors swirling that he was taking the Texas job. Like there were rumors before that first 4 game that the winner of the game got the Texas job.
Yeah.
And not all rumors are true. Most of them are false, but that one was kind of true. But we're here to talk about Richard. First of all, sorry, I got a sidetrack. As the number one Xavier fan I know, how would you grade the Sean Miller era at Xavier? They got to a Sweet 16 that year when they had Sule Boom as their best player. Mm-hmm. And then they got to the round of 64 this year.
Yeah.
Were you expecting more as a Xavier fan, or did he meet expectations?
Well, I'll start from like the beginning. His first team was not all Travis Steele, mostly Travis Steele players. Like Fremantle, Nunji, Kunkel, Colby Jones, like 80% of the starting lineup were Steele guys. That's the team that he does best with. So, like, good for him, proves that he can coach. Like Steele couldn't do that when he was the coach, but he could recruit, obviously. Then in his second year, 23/2024, just like disaster. Like Fremantle gets hurt again, misses the entire year. Jerome Hunter has like the heart attack and then tears his Achilles, misses the entire year. Mm-hmm. And then, so at that point they had to like panic. They tried some like international recruits. Those did not work at all. So it was Quincy Oliveri and friends last year.
Yeah.
That didn't go very well. Then this year, super high expectations. I feel like me personally as a fan, I feel like the floor was the tournament and the ceiling was, I don't know, like second weekend, Sweet 16, Elite 8. Like, I don't know. I felt really good about they had 10 or 11 guys that if they needed to play, they could play and contribute. And then it starts with Lucina Traore, tears his ACL in the preseason. Sean Miller, like, treats that as like his number one excuse, like a funeral for like a month. Like it dragged on so long. And then they really didn't click until like January. I mean, it all really clicked after Fremantle got hurt during the shootout. He comes back. Once he comes back, then they go on a run for the rest of the year. So we're talking like January. So yeah, expectations did fail. I just don't like how it all ended. Miller was pretty much blacklisted by like the NCAA after everything that happened at Arizona, and then Xavier's like the one program that gives him a leg line. His
Yeah.
opening press conference, he says, "I'm here to put Xavier back on the effing tracks."
Boom.
And then 3 years later, he's out the door. So,
boom. Yeah. And I think it was just kind of funny. Xavier fans have pointed this out on X and stuff, how their motto is all in.
yeah.
Sean. You didn't even follow your own motto, man.
Yeah. The worst thing was that his opening conference at Texas, he also used that phrase.
Really? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But one last kind of cap on the Sean Miller era is, I'm not a necessarily a big Xavier fan, Vlad's Xavier fan here, but I do have a parent who went to Xavier and is involved in Xavier athletics, and she's excited about the Pitino hire. It definitely sucks losing Ryan Conwell, Dalen Swain, but most of the Xavier roster was seniors, so they were going to have to try to rebuild one way or the other. It does suck losing those two guys, but to get Richard Pitino, I think, was really good. Is there anybody else who you would have had other than Pitino?
I mean, honestly, I think most people would agree with this. I think Chris Mack was like the guy all along until he wasn't. I still would have, I would have been open to Mack again. It would have been fun, and he can really coach. But there were questions, he's never been that much of a recruiter. And in today's era, I feel like that almost might be the number one thing in terms of, paying your guys money and stuff like that. But I don't know. I mean, in hindsight, I'm just glad that they're starting fresh and, this isn't a hire that was in the family. So it's something new. No idea what to expect, but I kind of like that though. Like you said, only two big losses were Swain and Conwell, and they still haven't really committed yet. But Dalen Swain was a Sean Miller recruit coming out of high school, so I think all signs point to him going to Texas. And then it sounds like Conwell is going to IU. So that one definitely hurts. He was one of my favorite players, but he's from Indiana, from Indianapolis, actually, so it makes sense.
No, Conwell was awesome. But, a lot of seniors. I'm thinking of Fremantle. I'm thinking one guy you didn't mention was Marcus Foster. Apparently he was a senior this year, and I think he's out of eligibility. So it looks like the only player that hasn't hit the portal for Xavier yet, and we'll get to Pitino in a second, but looks like the only player, other than maybe a couple of guys who I've never really heard of before, so I assume they're walk-ons, looks like the only player is Roddy Anderson. Yeah,
and then Lucina Traore technically hasn't, but
I was already thinking he was out the door, but
we were talking about this before we were recording, or something that came out on Twitter. It was on I think Trilly Donovan posted it. It was a Sean Miller whiteboard at Texas, and had Traore's name on the roster, saying that he was getting paid $500,000 in NIL. It's got to be tampering or something. He's not even in the portal. And I understand if he was in the portal, total sense, but there is not a single person in the transfer portal with the last name Traore. So
I agree. But I will say Richard Pitino is a good hire. Let's get to that. I'd say most Xavier fans that I've seen are pleased with this. He's getting announced tomorrow. We'll see what he says in his press conference. But Midwest Conference, Zach and I talked about the Midwest Conference all throughout the year. Coach of the Year 2025, New Mexico won the Mountain West regular season championship. Had the Mountain West Player of the Year in Donovan Dent. Unfortunately, Dent, he committed to UCLA. We might have a video about that soon. Might not, but Dent committed to UCLA, so he's not coming to Xavier. How realistic was that? And did you want Donovan Dent to transfer? And third question is, how big is Xavier's NIL bag? Because it seemed as if Dent was looking for the money.
Yeah.
So how do you think Xavier can stretch it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it was that realistic with the timing and circumstances. Like you said, like Dent hit the portal before the hire was announced. And then like Pitino still hasn't even been introduced yet. So I feel like that much of a time difference is pretty critical, especially if you already got other blue blood schools working against you. So I don't know. It was never really in their favor, but I mean, I don't know. It could have if he really liked Pitino that much. As for Xavier's NIL, I don't know an exact number. The only thing I know is that it is competitive within the Big East. That is like as firm as I know. It's like top half of the Big East. So competitive, but not able to be up there with like, like all of the powerhouse schools and stuff like that. So I don't know. I feel like they could have paid up for Dent, but then the rest of the roster might have been a little slacking. So I don't know. I can't really blame Dent. It's life-changing money, coming off a career year. So you can't really fault him for that.
Yeah. But Pitino, and shout out to X, shout out to Twelshi on X, Twelshi for the Photoshop. Good Photoshop of Pitino in the, like you said, the classic Xavier quarter zip. But Pitino, I like him. Enjoyed watching him at New Mexico for these past 4 years. Enjoyed his time at Minnesota. But he's at Xavier now. Happy for him. But the tough part, and I think the interesting part, is he pretty much has to rebuild the roster from scratch.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. We'll maybe talk couple minutes or seconds about who you might want in the portal, but there are so many guys that are in the portal and are going to enter the portal that it's going to be a waiting game. The season just ended for a lot of teams except 4. But I think that Xavier is a good destination. So I'm going to pitch it to some portalers. Xavier's a good destination, I think, for you if you want to play your final 2 years. Because I know the Big East isn't as good as the SEC or the Big 12, but the Big East still has some teams in there that play very competitively. I'm thinking, Hurley and UConn's going to have a good team next year. Pitino and St. John's, even though they're losing a lot of guys, are going to have a good season next year. Who else am I missing?
I mean, Marquette will probably be solid again. Creighton.
So. Yeah, we'll see. But hopefully, Big East will be good next year. The Cintas Center is a great facility. I think Xavier has good facilities as a whole. And you get to play in a city, a city like Cincinnati. Many transfers and many players have had successful pro careers. I'm not going to say it's an NBA launching ground, but guys have had good careers. Big Najee Marshall might be the only guy in the NBA right now, unless I'm mistaken, from Xavier. But
I think you're right. Edmund Sumner was for a while, and then he got hurt and released. Or Colby Jones. Sorry, Colby Jones is with the Wizards. But yeah,
Colby Jones,
those are the only 2.
And Pitino is a guy who can develop players. I mean, he developed Donovan Dent. He developed a lot of guys on New Mexico, some of whom I think he'll be bringing over to Xavier. A lot of New Mexico guys are in the portal. I think kind of 3 of their starting 5 members are probably going to go to Xavier. Philip Boravachinin. He's like the 6'10 forward. True Washington, who played well during the tournament. And CJ Noland. Will probably all be heading to Xavier, if I had to guess. But real quick, would you want to see anybody in particular in a Xavier uniform?
Well, besides those 3 guys, those are good shots there. I don't know, like Nelly Jr. Joseph. I think he's got another year of eligibility. He would be.
Oh,
nice.
does he? Okay. Well, then if he does, then he'll probably go to Xavier.
I would hope so. And then freshman Javon Milicevic, he just entered the portal today. Freshman, didn't play, or actually, no, he played a good amount. He didn't. His minutes weren't crazy, but 6'10" forward, have 3 years left. Shot like 40% from three, so definitely a interesting one to keep eyes on. And then I don't know. I've seen a lot of different players like mentioned on Twitter of Xavier like reaching out and things like that, but there's so many of those guys. I would say the only one that I would be like, wow, like that's a home run would be Markel Sutton from Omaha.
Okay.
Summit League Player of the Year. Xavier is reported to have reached out. I'm sure they're not the only ones that have. But he took Omaha to the tournament. I mean, 19 points a game. Not going to shoot it exceptionally well, but definitely go get you a bucket. And then lastly, probably one of the best names in college sports, Valpo guard, transfer guard. All right. He's visiting Xavier tomorrow.
Oh, really? All right. Wow.
We'll see how that shapes up. He was a freshman this last year, averaged like 15, something like that, shot 38.
Yeah, I really like all right.
So, yeah, that's one to keep eyes on. He could definitely be their starting point guard. Him and like True Washington in the backcourt, I think you could do a lot worse than that. So, yeah, I don't know. It's fun because it's a new guy. You don't really know how he's going to recruit or like what type of players he's looking for. So I don't know. There's obviously a lot of risk in building a roster from near scratch, but at the same time, it's fun because then you get to learn about 12 new guys and what he likes, what he doesn't. And yeah, it's a fun process.
I definitely agree. I'll just throw out a couple names. It's not going to be as comprehensive as Vlad's one. This is just kind of from my, because Pitino really hasn't given a whole lot of, they haven't really given a whole lot out. But here are just a few names that I think would be interesting to see at Xavier. You can tell me first, because Rick Pitino kind of passed Nelly Jr. Joseph to Richard, because they got a good relationship, father and son. Probably not, because I think it ended on bad terms, but I'd be curious if RJ Lewis might go to Xavier.
That would be ridiculous. I would definitely
love it. It would be ridiculous.
I want to say Kentucky reached out to him, so that would be quite the battle to fight.
Yeah.
But if he did, that would be pretty fun. But yeah.
Yeah, I was just, that's a long shot in case like he's just a huge Pitino guy and one Pitino didn't want him, so he just goes the other. But a couple of other guys that I'm looking at, maybe some more realistic players or more realistic fits, I would say. I'm looking at a lot of the Mountain West guys because, as you know, Pitino coached in the Mountain West for 4 years. He saw a lot of players at New Mexico, and, he might have a connection to these Mountain West guys. So, I don't know. A couple guys I'm looking at are Nick Boyd from the FAU guy who went to San Diego State, maybe to play. He's a fifth-year guard. And then Kyan Evans, the point guard from Colorado State, who had a good tournament. Those are just two names that I think would be interesting. And then a third, a guy who kind of just hopped in the portal. And I'm thinking maybe he's got some sort of connection maybe to Cincinnati or to the Midwest region. Not sure that's the case, but I would be curious if former IU guy, especially now that he's a little more under the radar now, I'd be curious if Mackenzie Mbako might give Xavier a shot. Maybe just be like the do everything guy for Xavier. I don't know, have a bigger role than he did at IU.
If that's what he wants, I mean, he could definitely be the guy.
Yeah.
I'm sure like a lot of bigger schools will be after him, and I don't really know what his goal is. I don't know. Obviously, his ultimate goal is to go to the NBA, but I don't know if he wants to be a guy that is the face of a team to do that, or if he wants to go and work with a coach that'll help him out on like everything, like defense and playmaking and stuff like that. I don't know what he wants to do. So we'll see how that plays out. Yeah, I guess the fit at IU you could definitely tell they were second choice after he decommitted. So,
yeah. But anyway, good luck to Xavier fans. Richard Pitino is here. We'll be looking forward to when he gets announced, and we'll be covering Xavier a little bit more if they make some portal moves.